The divine counsel, eternal righteousness, the divine bedrock. As of now, we have established what are the present-day requirements of the first and third angel's message in reference to the sealing of the two eternal fathers of John 1:1. The latter-day resolution of the true Godhead of eternal 1 and 2 is well established upon the divine bedrock of Psalms 110, 1-4, John 1:1, and 1:14. As pertaining to Christ Jesus as the Alpha and the Omega, as well as the fact that he is the I Am, as declared by him when he stated, "Before Abraham, I am." The fact that the religious leaders picked up stones proves that they knew what he was talking about. But what about Eternal Father number 1? We know that there are two Elohim based on the witness of John 1:1 itself. In beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God and alongside God. The matter of Eternal Father number 1 appears to the worldly theologians, who most of the time are advocates of schools of higher interpretation, begin this quest from the vantage point of the Canaanites, since they believed that the religion of Israel was developed from the Canaanite pantheon of gods, whom they have so-called evidence from the Ugaritic text was El or Elyon, and that this El, Elyon, was later amalgamated with the latter Yahweh. While these conclusions appear to be intriguing, with their intent being that the Hebrew religion based on Yahweh was a later syncretistic amalgamation, which was derived from the Canaanite pantheon, adding insult to injury, the Canaanite source declares that El Elyon had a consort named Asherah. We know this to be untenable theology, since the goddess Asherah was also the consort of Baal, and Baal was a later invention. We also find that in the book of Jeremiah, the worship of Asherah was detestable to the God of Israel. The divine counsel. The objective of this explanation is not to prove whether there was a divine counsel or not, yet there appear to be spiritual references to councils in the heavens, starting with the book of Job, which is considered the oldest book in the Bible. If Job lived prior to Moses or during the patriarchal period, then it was probably around the time that the Canaanites inhabited the area of what is today Palestine. This is most definitely true, since Genesis 10 tells us the following. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Akite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zarmarite, and the Hemathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanite was from Sidon, as thou goest toward Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest toward Sodom, and Gomorrah, and Admon Zeboam, and to Laishah. These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, in their nations. Now take note of the following. And unto Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, to him also were children born, the sons of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arpachshad, and Lud, Aram, and the sons of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feareth God and turned away from evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, and 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the children of the east. Did you catch that? Job, a descendant from the Semitic line. Oracle of the God of Israel outside of the land of Canaan. The Bible presents a revelation of the God of Israel outside of the Canaanite pantheon, and presents this revelation outside of the area of Palestine, and this individual, perhaps to a lesser degree or greater than Solomon, was the greatest of the children of the East. I would say greater than Solomon for a specific reason, because Job had a revelation which extends down to the end of the age. And to be more specific, it's in Revelation 13:8, but more on that later. There is a greater truth encapsulated within the book of Job, more so than in the feasts of Solomon, who later fell into apostasy and witchcraft. And more on that later. This truth involves the seal of God from the east, and it also involves the book of Job. After this, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that no wind should blow on the earth, or on the sea, or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascend from the sun rising, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a great voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we shall have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of them that were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe of the children of Israel. Divine counsel in the book of Job. Well, the bottom line is that the book of Job alludes to a council. This council consists of the sons of God coming before his presence. Now it came to pass on the day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, that Satan also came among them. And Yahweh said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered Yahweh, and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job? For there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and turneth away from evil. Then Satan answered Yahweh, and said, Doth Job fear God? For not. Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Much has been stated in Advent circles about this council in the form of unfallen beings who populated other planets, and perhaps were the atoms of their respective planets. Some say they were angels, but angels, as far as I know, were not entrusted with governing planets. Question mark. Whether true or false, we don't know for sure at this point in time, but there was an invitation to the sons of God. This matter has no concrete answers yet, but why was Satan present in this specific council? So the answer to this is when Adam fell by eating of the forbidden tree, he handed the keys of this planet to Satan, and that was the reason as to why Satan was present in that council. He was representing planet Earth before the throne of God. When Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, the same issue came up. Satan offered Jesus the kingdoms of this world if Jesus would bow down and worship him. In the book of Daniel, the same issue. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Here we have a classic case of a fallen angel, principality, that has control over a certain historical geographic area. Later, the angel Gabriel tells Daniel that another principality was coming to oppose his work, the prince of Greece. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I am come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I go forth, lo, the prince of Greece shall come. But I will tell thee that which is inscribed in the writing of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me against these things, but Michael your prince. So, the question is, who appointed these demonic entities to rule over specific territories? The question has to be answered from the revelation of the book of Job. Satan himself, since he had dominion of this planet and appeared in that council as representative of our planet. We then have Psalms 82. God standeth in the congregation of God. He judgeth among the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly and respect the persons of the wicked? Selah. Judge the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and destitute. Rescue the poor and needy. Deliver them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither do they understand. They walk to and fro in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, Ye are gods, and all of you sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all the nations. So why are the foundations of the earth shaken in relation to an earthly council of men? that weren't even born in relation to the foundations of the earth shaken. Could it have been the decision of God to create man, thus replacing the angels as gods, as stated by Jesus himself when he quoted the psalm to the religious leaders? Could that statement of Jesus, "Ye are gods and sons of the Most High," have been what originally caused the foundations of the earth to be shaken by way of the angelic war prior to the creation of man? This being one of the fundamental reasons, along with the mystery of iniquity, for that war which caused desolation to an already created planet, as well as the others in our solar system which presently find themselves in a suspended state of decay? While this premise of the planets of our solar system have been subjected to decay because of Satan's sin, cannot be totally addressed, thus implying a prior administration of planet Earth or the other planets. What cannot be ignored are the words bohu and tohu, which imply desolation, rebellion, and chaos. Questions to be asked. Who are they? Why would they die like men? Aren't they men? Or were they angels who would die like men because of their rebellion? Why would they fall like one of the princes? Men die like men since we are born on a fallen planet, but fall like one of the princes? So, who is this one particular prince? It is obviously Satan, as identified in Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. Whereas Satan caused 1/3 of the angels to fall along with himself, see Revelation 12, the former verses target Satan. Both verses target one individual. The following verses from 11 to 14 appear to be a pre-fall explanation of Satan. From verses 11, the first portion of verses 15, Lucifer was perfect and was in Eden. The question, in which Eden? A pre-Bohu and Tohu or a post-Bohu and Tohu for Adam and Eve? Or was he present in both for two distinct reasons? Verses 11 to 14 imply that Lucifer was in a pre-fall Eden. Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man. For I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me, whereas where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding. Who determined the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who stretched the line upon it? Whereupon were the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. If this is the case, and the earth was originally created for angels, as stated in verse 7, then the fallen angels die like men, and fall like their original prince Lucifer. Jeremiah 4. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was waste and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved to and fro. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful field was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of Yahweh and before his fierce anger. Pre-Adamite animal life, verses 28, Bohu and Tohu, verse 29. The terraforming of planet Earth equals the renewest the face of the earth. Thou dost give to them, they gather. Thou dost open thy hand, they are satisfied with good. Thou hadst thy face, they are troubled. Thou gatherest their spirit, they expire, and into their dust they turn back. Thou sendest out thy spirit, they are created, and thou renewest the face of the ground. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom, and perfect in beauty. Thou wast in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, carbuncle, gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was in thee. In the day that thou wast created they were prepared. Thou wast the anointed cherub, that covereth, and I set thee so, that thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created till unrighteousness was found in thee. By the abundance of thy traffic they filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore have I cast thee as a profane out of the mountain of God, and I have destroyed thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I have cast thee to the ground. I have laid thee before kings, that they may behold thee. By the multitude of thine iniquities, in the unrighteousness of thy traffic, thou hast profaned thy sanctuaries. Therefore have I brought thee forth a fire from the midst of thee. It hath devoured thee, and I have turned thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that beheld thee. And they that know thee among the peoples shall be astonished at thee. Thou art become a terror, and thou shalt never more have any being. How art thou fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, that didst lay low the nations? And thou saidst in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the uttermost parts of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will make myself like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to Sheol, to the uttermost parts of the pit. They that see thee shall gaze at thee, they shall consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and overthrew the cities thereof, that let not loose his prisoners to the home? So who are these princes? Did they impact the foundation of the earth prior to the creation in Genesis 1's revelation of Bohu and Tohu? And why is desolation and waste seen on the other planets of our solar system? Why fragments of space rocks in the form of asteroids, meteors, which appear to be fragments of impacted space bodies? Are these evidence of a massive war which took place in the universe prior to the creation of Adam, the first man? All evidence indicates that what took place in Genesis 1 was a terraforming of planet Earth, whereas the other planets in our solar system have not been terraformed. The question being, could there have been a divine council in the heavens which included the participation of angels? Could the unity of this council have been fragmented by the sin of Lucifer, and later 1/3 of these angels decided to side with Lucifer, whereas the other 2/3 remained loyal to God? Why the expression of Christ being anointed rather than thy fellows who remained faithful, as opposed to another council of 1/3 that sided with Lucifer? It is not the objective of this study to answer all these questions, but they do provide a backdrop as the why the Canaanite pantheon presents one all-important God, El Elyon, with all other false gods being subservient to him. The question could there have been a divine council in the heavens which included the participation of angels? Minus the fact that Sister White utilizes the expression the Son prior to the incarnation, which is totally incorrect. Yet the rebellion and the war in heaven were previous to the terraforming of the earth, and had to contextually be the reason for planet Earth's condition of bohu and tohu prior to its terraformation. Fact is, the foundations of the earth, as being presented in Psalms 82, match the desolation and void of the earth in Genesis 1. Some translators say that the earth was already created, yet underwater. Yet being underwater implies tribulation after its creation. Psalms 124:4. Then the waters have overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul. This biblical definition of waters and tribulation perfectly align with bohu and tohu in relation to troubles, chaos, and rebellion. The Canaanite pantheon. The other question is the following: did the revelation of the divine council, while recognizing the true Elohim of El Elyon, ascribe deity to the gods of the nations? Yes, because the Bible stated that Satan was the god of this world, and Jesus saw him fall like lightning. 2 Corinthians 4:4, Luke 10:18. He is also the prince of the power of the air, Ephesians 2:2. Yet at the same time, the Apostle Paul stated that the gods of the nations are no gods, 1 Corinthians 8:5, and that is true as well. But in reference to the words of Jesus regarding the gods of the nations, the answer is yes, and the book of Job provides the fundamental reason as to why there was a council in the heavens and why Satan showed up in representation of earth. The revelation of Job actually pinpoints the role of Satan in the divine council that angels have committed folly. Job 4:18. This proves that the Canaan pantheon, while employing truth, also employs the falsehood of El Elyon, having a consort in the form of Asherah equals feminine divine, is wrong. The Canaanite explanation regarding El Elyon having a partner in the form of Asherah presents an insult to the Elohim of John 1:1. Bohu Tohu, Genesis 1. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis 1 from the OJB. In the beginning Elohim created Hashomayim, the heavens, Himmel, and Haaretz, the earth. And the earth was Tohu, Vavohu, without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Ruach Elohim was hovering upon the face of the waters. Desolation and void, Bohu and Tohu. The second application of the divine counsel in Psalms 82 would apply to the religious leaders of ancient Israel. A divine earthquake, shaking the foundations of the earth, did swallow Dathan and Korah. Dathan and Korah committed the same sin as Lucifer. They wanted to be like Moses, who was appointed by God, yet they weren't appointed. A third application. Another earthquake shook ancient Israel at the death of Jesus Christ as an indicator that these princes, or tenants of the vineyard, being chosen of God to lead the nation into eternal life, would die as men. Fallen angel present in the divine council. 2 Corinthians 18. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, Did I not tell thee that he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil? And Micaiah said, Therefore, hear thou the word of Yahweh. I said, I saw Yahweh sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him, on his right hand and on his left. And Yahweh said, Who shall entice Ahab, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. And there came forth a spirit and stood before Yahweh, and said, I will entice him. And Yahweh said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Thou shalt entice him, and shalt prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, Yahweh hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and Yahweh hath spoken evil concerning thee. As we can see that the idea of fallen angels posing as gods, or the word of God in a council directed by Eternal Father number 1, or number 2, as the Most High, is not antithetical to the Canaanite narrative. The only point that is antithetical is the false idea that El Elyon had a wife, since this forms the basis of the divine feminine as seen in mysticism and Gnostic teachings. The revelation of Melchizedek. Then there's the revelation of Melchizedek in Genesis 14. People ask themselves, how could a king of the ancient Canaanite fortress of Jebus, be greater than Abraham and bless Abraham, considering that the Canaanites were wicked? Also, how could a mere human, if he was indeed a Canaanite human, be a king of righteousness? The answer to that finds itself in the revelation of the book of Job, which will be revisited at the end of this study. Then there's the original understanding of who Melchizedek truly was, as revealed in the Dead Sea Scrolls 11Q13. It reveals that Melchizedek was deity and conducts the Day of Atonement during the 10th Jubilee. Then we have the concept of Passover in the form of bread and wine as presented to Abraham by Melchizedek as a revelation of the upcoming feast of Passover and unleavened bread. Here we see a classic case of the God of Israel being manifested and presenting a revelation to the father of the nation that he would birth into existence during a time frame that scholars historically identify as Jerusalem, or Jebus, being under the control of the Canaanites. Yet Melchizedek was the king of Salem, Jebus, Jabu. Later, the Apostle Paul confirms the aspects of deity as presented in document 11Q13 by declaring the following. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham divided a tenth part of all, being first by interpretation king of righteousness, and then also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Psalm 78:35. This brings into the picture the revelation of the duality of the Godhead in the form of Psalm 78:35. And they remembered that God was their rock and the Most High God their Redeemer. Since the only references found in the Bible, such as Psalms 110, 1-4, declares from verse 1 that one of the Lords is speaking to King David's Lord and telling him to sit at his right side until he puts all his enemies under his feet. Then in verse 4, this Lord addresses the sent Lord or rod, David's Lord, as being of the order of Melchizedek. It is rather obvious that from logical deduction, the one who appears in verse 4 is the same one who descended in verse 2, and prior to verse 2, being sent, he had to be God alongside God, which means that David's Lord, being God, had no father or mother, beginning of days nor end of life, and had to be Melchizedek himself. By the time he descends as the rod, he is declared to be the order of Melchizedek. The question is, why a dichotomy of Melchizedek? The answer to that resides in the fact of the prerequisites of the order of Melchizedek, which are 1. No father or mother, 2. No beginning of days nor end of life, and 3. No genealogy, and 4. Melchizedek made like unto the Son of God. An oracle of the God of Israel during the Canaanite era equals Hebrews 5:12. The conclusion: Jerusalem was not yet under the control of King David, yet in the revelation of Melchizedek there is revealed the following by King David and later the Apostle Paul, is that Psalms 110:1 equals the first three prerequisites of the order of Melchizedek, which means that the first three are in fact Melchizedek himself. By the time we reach verse 4, he becomes Melchizedek, made like unto the Son of God, or the order of Melchizedek in the human genetics of Romans 1:3. And after the resurrection, great high priest of the order of Melchizedek, since he is born of the resurrection in Romans 1:4 and Hebrews 6:19-20. At Babel, the revelation of the God of Israel at the plain of Shinar. Here again we witness the Elohim of Israel prior to Israel and how they were both agents of the language confusion at Babel. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Come, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And Yahweh said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is what they begin to do. And now nothing will be withholden from them, which they purpose to do. Come, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore was the name of it called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. Conclusion: it is ludicrous to assume that the concept or construct of the Elohim of Israel began with the Canaanite pantheon, since Genesis 1:26 establishes the eternal two of John 1:1 and Deuteronomy 6:4 in that specific verse in Genesis. Let us create man in our image and likeness. It is ludicrous to assume that the pantheon of Canaanite gods were the basis of a theological construct of the God of Israel from an original Canaanite source as taught by Jordan Maxwell and others, since they existed prior to the scattering of languages and were in fact the agents of that transformation. The only conclusion is that the people of the nation spread the stories far and wide, just like when the God of Israel brought out the nations out of Egypt by way of powerful miracles. And the 10 plagues, it is natural that the different nations heard of these exploits, and they came to fear the God of Israel. Modern-day proof. Extensive videos on the real Mount Sinai, Jabal al-Alaz, as well as the chariot wheels under the Red Sea pictures are an eye-opener. The return of the ancient gods. Getting back to the ancient Canaanite narrative, what was the purpose of the exaltation of Asherah, feminine divine concept that was hated by the Elohim of Israel? Etymology reveals the truth, since it is the study of words, and we see the rise of paganism in these last days. We can understand by the names that demons are using reveals that these same ancient principalities are coming back in the form of aliens or some other form of demonic manifestation. Case in point, the so-called alien known as Commander Ashtar of the so-called Galactic Light Brigade. Etymology traces his name to Ashtarte, Easter, or Ishtar. And here are your links for further study. Eternal righteousness revisited in Revelation 13:8. Just as Job had to repent of his self-righteousness when he witnessed the glory of the God of Israel, Christ, the inhabitants of planet Earth, will be faced with the same decision in reference, and all that dwell on the earth shall worship him, everyone whose name hath not been written in the foundation, from the foundation of the world, in the book of the life of the Lamb that hath been slain. How would the inhabitants of planet Earth be duped into believing that the devil can impart righteousness to humans? It will be accomplished by the rebranding righteousness by faith. The so-called mystical experiences of unity consciousness will declare to humans that you don't have to believe by faith to be one with Christ. This will say that you can experience unity consciousness by way of introversive and extroversive union of your mind to the universe. That you will experience oneness by way of righteousness by being. Whereas God is not going to give anyone warnings in the form of trumpets after the closing of the second woe. The judgments that are coming in the third woe and in the form of the 7 last plagues which will leave no doubt in these mystical minds of those who are promoting these concepts of sparks coming down from the universe, which become enlightened by their own righteousness. The true and final answer is the unchanging nature of Jesus Christ. Thou, Lord, in the beginning didst lay the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thy hands. They shall perish, but thou continuest, and they all shall wax old as doth a garment, and as a mantle shalt thou roll them up as a garment, and they shall be changed. But thou art the same, and thy years shall not fail. This is true eternal righteousness, not the mind tricks of unity consciousness by way of the devil and his servants, angels who are ministers of righteousness. Yep, it is no great thing. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works.